The courtroom was silent. The judge, an older man with silver hair and thick glasses, leaned forward, staring at the 12-year-old black boy standing confidently before him. A slow grin spread across his face as he tapped his gavel lightly against the desk. "All right, young man," the judge said, his voice amused but firm. "Let's play a game. Truth or lie? I'll ask you some questions, and we'll see if you can outsmart me. Sound fair?" A ripple of laughter ran through the courtroom. The boy, dressed in a neatly pressed suit that looked too big for his small frame, didn't laugh. He simply nodded, his sharp brown eyes locked onto the judge's. The judge cleared his throat and leaned back in his chair. "First question," he began, his smile widening. "The law states that a person is innocent until proven guilty. Truth or lie?" The boy didn't blink. "Lie," he answered. The courtroom gasped. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Oh? And why is that?" "Because in reality, people are treated as guilty first and have to prove their innocence," the boy said calmly. "Especially if they're black." The judge's smile faded slightly. He shifted in his seat, glancing toward the courtroom audience. Some murmured in agreement, others whispered in shock. "All right," the judge continued, his voice a little less playful. "Let's try another one. A judge must be completely fair and unbiased in every case. Truth or lie?" The boy's lips curled into a knowing smile. "Lie," the judge frowned. "Explain." "Because judges are human," the boy replied smoothly. "And humans have biases, whether they admit it or not. You, for example, have already decided that I'm just a kid who doesn't know what he's talking about. That's your bias." The courtroom erupted into shocked murmurs. The judge's face turned red. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. "Order," he barked. The courtroom fell silent again. The judge took a deep breath, rubbing his temple. He stared at the boy, suddenly realizing this wasn't going to be the simple game he had expected. He had underestimated him, and now he had a feeling he was about to lose. Earlier that day, the courtroom had been buzzing with anticipation. Reporters sat in the back rows, their cameras flashing as they whispered among themselves. The case had captured the city's attention: an unfair arrest, a child genius, and a judge known for his strict rulings. 12-year-old Caleb Jackson stood between his public defender and his mother, his hands neatly folded in front of him. He didn't fidget. He didn't look scared. In fact, he looked completely calm. The arrest had been a mistake. Or rather, that's what the police wanted people to believe. Caleb had been sitting in the public library when officers stormed in, accusing him of being involved in a recent burglary. The evidence? A vague description of a black boy in a hoodie. Never mind that Caleb was reading a book on constitutional law when they dragged him away in handcuffs. The video of his arrest had gone viral. People were outraged, but outrage didn't mean justice. Now, Caleb stood before Judge Louis Albert, a man with a reputation for handing out harsh sentences. The judge studied him from behind his glasses. "Son, do you understand why you're here today?" Caleb lifted his chin. "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you know what you're being accused of?" "Yes." The judge adjusted his glasses. "Do you have anything to say before we begin?" Caleb hesitated. Then he spoke. "I'd like to represent myself." Gasps filled the room. His mother gripped his arm. "Caleb." But the boy shook his head. He had made up his mind. Judge Albert's eyes twinkled with amusement. "You want to act as your own lawyer?" "Yes." The judge chuckled. "That's bold." "Smart," Caleb corrected. The judge chuckled again. "All right then, young man. Let's see if you're as smart as you think you are." And that was how it started. A game, a test, a battle of wits between a seasoned judge and a 12-year-old legal prodigy. The courtroom leaned forward, eager to watch the spectacle unfold. But no one, not even the judge, was prepared for what would happen next. Caleb was about to turn the entire case upside down. And before the judge knew it, he would realize something terrifying. He was losing control. The judge sighed, glancing at the prosecutor, a tall man in a crisp navy suit. "Mr. Callahan, I assume the state is ready to present its evidence?" The prosecutor stood, smirking slightly. He had underestimated the boy too, but now he was ready to put him in his place. "Absolutely, Your Honor," Callahan said, stepping forward. "The state has surveillance footage placing the defendant near the scene of the crime, as well as a witness who identified him." Caleb didn't flinch. "Objection." Judge Albert raised an eyebrow. "On what grounds?" On the grounds that being near a crime is not the same as committing one, Caleb said smoothly. And I'd like to see this so-called footage. The judge nodded. Let's see it. A screen flickered to life in the courtroom. A grainy black and white video played, showing a figure in a hoodie walking past a convenience store. It was dark. The person's face was barely visible. This, Callahan said confidently, was taken just minutes before the store was broken into. This individual matches the description given by our witness. Caleb folded his arms. What description? Callahan frowned. Excuse me? You said I matched the description, Caleb repeated. So what was the description? The prosecutor glanced at his notes. The suspect was described as a young black male wearing a hoodie. Caleb let out a slow, deliberate breath. So, to be clear, the only reason I was arrested was because I am a black kid wearing a hoodie. The courtroom buzzed again. Callahan's jaw tightened. You were in the area, and the witness confirmed. Which witness? Caleb cut in. Callahan sighed, clearly irritated. We'll be bringing them in to testify shortly. Caleb nodded. Good, because I have a few questions for them. The judge held up his hand. Let's keep this moving. Mr. Callahan, do you have any stronger evidence than a blurry video and a vague description? Callahan hesitated, then shook his head. Not at this time, Your Honor. Caleb smiled slightly. Interesting. The judge leaned forward. All right, Caleb. Since you're so confident, why don't you tell us where you were at the time of the crime? Caleb adjusted his tie. Gladly. I was at the city library. Callahan scoffed. Can you prove that? Yes, Caleb said. And I can prove something even more interesting. The judge narrowed his eyes. And what's that? Caleb turned to the bailiff. Your Honor, I'd like to submit my library checkout records as evidence. A low gasp rippled through the courtroom. Callahan frowned. How does that prove anything? Because, Caleb said, not only was I at the library, but I checked out a book at the exact time the store was being robbed. He turned to the judge. The timestamp is printed on the receipt. It's irrefutable proof that I wasn't there. The judge's lips pressed together. Bailiff, bring the document forward. The courtroom watched as the bailiff handed the receipt to the judge. He scanned it quickly, his expression unreadable. After a long moment, he sighed. This receipt shows that you checked out a book at 8:42 p.m. exactly, Caleb said, and the store was robbed at 8:40 p.m. There's no way I could have done it. Callahan's face paled. Caleb turned to the prosecutor, his voice calm but powerful. You arrested me with no real evidence. You brought me here with nothing but assumptions, and now your entire case is falling apart because you underestimated me. The judge exhaled, rubbing his temple. All right, let's take a short recess. We'll reconvene in 20 minutes. He banged his gavel, but as people stood to stretch, the courtroom doors burst open. A police officer rushed in, looking frantic. Your Honor, he called, panting. We just got a report the real suspect has been caught, and he already confessed. The room froze. All eyes turned to Caleb. He didn't say a word. He just smiled. A heavy silence settled over the courtroom. The police officer, still panting from his rush inside, held up a manila folder. The real suspect was caught breaking into another store just 15 minutes ago. When questioned, he confessed to both crimes, including the one Caleb was accused of. Judge Albert stared at the officer, then slowly turned to Caleb. The 12-year-old genius stood tall, his face unreadable. He had known it all along. The judge tapped his fingers on his desk, his expression darkening. Officer, are you telling me that we've been putting this boy on trial for a crime someone else just admitted to? The officer shifted uncomfortably. Yes, Your Honor. Murmurs exploded through the courtroom. Reporters frantically took notes. Cameras flashed, and Caleb's mother grabbed her chest, overwhelmed by emotions. Callahan, the prosecutor, clenched his jaw. He had been so sure, so arrogant. Now he looked like a fool. Judge Albert exhaled through his nose, clearly irritated. Mr. Callahan, do you have any explanation for this? Callahan opened his mouth but hesitated. There was no explanation that wouldn't make him look incompetent. His case had just collapsed in real time. The judge turned back to Caleb. His voice was quieter now, but it held something new respect. Caleb, you knew, didn't you? Caleb nodded. I knew I was innocent. I just needed time to prove it. The judge sighed, rubbing his temples. This is a disaster. He took a long breath, then sat up straight. The charges against Caleb Jackson are officially dropped. This case is dismissed. A cheer erupted from the back of the courtroom. Caleb's mother rushed forward, throwing her arms around him. "Oh, baby, I knew you'd prove them wrong," she sobbed into his shoulder. Caleb hugged her back, but his mind was still working. He had won, but something about this didn't sit right. The police had arrested him too easily. The prosecutor had pushed too hard with almost no real evidence. And now, just as he was about to break the case apart, the real suspect was conveniently caught. Something was off. The judge slammed his gavel, bringing order back to the room. Court is adjourned. But just as people began packing up, Caleb spoke up. "Wait." Everyone turned to look at him. The judge frowned. "Caleb, the case is over. You're free to go." "I know," Caleb said, "but I have a question for the officer." The officer shifted, suddenly uncomfortable. Yes?" Caleb narrowed his eyes. "You said the real suspect was caught just 15 minutes ago." "That's right," the officer replied. "And he confessed on the spot?" The officer hesitated. "Well, yes." Caleb tilted his head. "That's odd." The courtroom fell silent again. Judge Albert leaned forward. "Why is that odd?" "Because confessions don't usually happen that fast," Caleb said. "A suspect caught in the act might deny it, ask for a lawyer, or try to negotiate. But this guy just confessed immediately? That doesn't make sense." Callahan jumped in, desperate to end this nightmare. "Caleb, the case is over. You're free. Let it go." But Caleb shook his head. "No, something isn't right, and I want to know what." His mother tugged on his arm. "Baby, we can go home now. Let's not push our luck." But Caleb had already turned back to the officer. "Where was this suspect caught?" The officer swallowed. Down on 5th Street." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "5th Street? That's on the other side of the city." The officer nodded. "Yes, but..." Caleb cut him off. "Then how was he in two places at once?" A ripple of shock moved through the courtroom. Judge Albert's brow furrowed. "What do you mean, Caleb?" Caleb turned to the judge, his mind racing. "If he was caught on 5th Street breaking into a store, that means he was in the middle of committing another crime. So when did he have time to confess about the first robbery?" The officer's face turned pale. Caleb pressed further. "And if he confessed, what exactly did he say?" The officer licked his lips, looking nervous now. He said he did it. That's all." Caleb stared him down. "Did he give details?" The officer hesitated. Well, not exactly." "Did he mention the store by name?" Caleb pushed. The officer shifted uncomfortably. Not specifically." "No." Caleb folded his arms. "Then that's not a confession. That's a cover-up." A stunned hush filled the courtroom. Judge Albert's expression darkened. "Officer, who ordered you to say this?" The officer stiffened. I was just told by my superior that the case was closed." "Who is your superior?" Caleb asked. The officer's mouth clamped shut. Judge Albert slammed his gavel. "You will answer the question." The officer flinched. It was, but before he could finish, the back doors of the courtroom burst open. 2 more officers stormed in, their faces hard. One of them, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a badge that gleamed under the fluorescent lights, spoke first. "That's enough," he said, his voice like steel. "This case is over. Everyone needs to go home." Caleb's heart pounded. Something was very, very wrong. Judge Albert frowned. "Who are you?" "Freddie Charles," the man said coldly. "And I'm here to make sure this doesn't go any further." The entire courtroom seemed to freeze. Caleb swallowed. He had cracked open something bigger than he realized. And now, the people in charge didn't want him to dig any deeper. Judge Albert's face turned to stone. "Are you telling me that a police Freddie is walking into my courtroom to interfere with justice?" Charles didn't blink. "I'm telling you that this is bigger than one case. Let it go." The judge sat stiffly in his chair, his fingers gripping the bench, his eyes sharp as they watched the doors where Charles had just left. Caleb took a step forward. "Your Honor," he said, his voice clear, "you see what just happened, right?" The judge turned to him. "Yes, Caleb, I saw." The courtroom was silent. Callahan, the prosecutor, looked uneasy. The reporters in the back were scribbling down notes as fast as they could. Then the judge sighed, rubbing his temples. "But Caleb, listen to me carefully." He met the boy's eyes. "This is not just a case anymore. This is something else, and it's dangerous." Caleb squared his shoulders. "Then that means we have to do something about it." His mother grabbed his arm, her voice trembling. "Baby, please, we won your case. Let's go home before something bad happens." Caleb turned to her. "Mom, something bad already happened. I was arrested for no reason. They wanted to throw me in jail without evidence." And now the police are trying to cover up the truth. He shook his head. I can't just walk away. Judge Albert studied him for a long moment, then sighed heavily. You're really not going to let this go, are you? Caleb shook his head. The judge sat back. Fine. But if we're going to do this, we have to be smart. We need proof, real proof, that something bigger is going on. Caleb nodded. Then we start with the confession. Callahan scoffed. Oh, for the love of Caleb, this case is done. You won. Why are you still digging? Caleb turned to him, his face unreadable. Because I know you knew. Callahan's smug expression faltered. Excuse me? You knew this case was weak, Caleb said. You knew the evidence against me was trash, and yet you pushed it anyway. Why? Callahan's face turned red. I was just doing my job. No, Caleb said, stepping closer. You were doing someone else's job. Who told you to make sure I lost? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Callahan's jaw clenched. He turned to the judge. Your Honor, this is ridiculous. He's just a kid. He doesn't understand how the system works. But Judge Albert didn't stop Caleb. Instead, he leaned forward. Actually, I think he understands it better than most. Callahan swallowed. He looked nervous now. Caleb continued. The so-called confession happened too fast. The real suspect was caught at the perfect moment. And now, a police Freddy just walked into a courtroom and tried to shut everything down. He folded his arms. That's not a coincidence. That's a cover-up. Callahan's face was pale. This is insane. Judge Albert drummed his finger against the bench. Mr. Callahan, he said in a low voice, answer the boy's question. Did someone pressure you to make sure Caleb was found guilty? Callahan licked his lips. I can't talk about that. Caleb smiled slightly. That means yes. The courtroom exploded into murmurs. The reporters were whispering, cameras clicking. Callahan's hands clenched into fists. I need to leave, he said, grabbing his briefcase. But before he could take a step, the judge banged his gavel. Mr. Callahan, you will sit down, Judge Albert ordered. Callahan froze. He hesitated, then slowly sat back down, his hands shaking. Caleb's heart pounded. He was so close to breaking this wide open. Judge Albert turned to the officer who had first delivered the confession. Officer, the first want the full report on this so-called confession, right now. The officer swallowed. I don't have it with me. Then go get it, the judge snapped. We're not leaving until we see it. The officer hesitated, then nodded quickly and rushed out of the room. Caleb exhaled, his mind racing. He had expected to clear his name today. He hadn't expected to stumble into something much, much bigger. Judge Albert tapped his gavel again. We will take a 30-minute recess while we wait for that report. Court is not adjourned. People stood, stretching, whispering. Caleb turned to his mother. See? I told you something was off. She rubbed her temples. Baby, you are going to give me a heart attack. Caleb smiled a little, but he couldn't relax yet. He stepped outside the courtroom, heading toward the water fountain in the hallway. He needed a second to think, but just as he reached for the button, a hand grabbed his shoulder. Caleb tensed. He turned slowly. Freddie Charles stood there, his expression cold. You don't know what you're messing with, kid. Caleb swallowed hard, but he didn't look away. Charles leaned in, his voice a whisper. If you're smart, you'll walk away from this right now. Caleb forced himself to stand tall. And if I don't? Charles smiled, but it wasn't friendly. Then you might not make it home. A chill ran down Caleb's spine. Charles let go of his shoulder and walked away like nothing had happened. Caleb stood frozen, his heart hammering. He had just been threatened, and now he knew one thing for sure: whatever was going on, whatever they were trying to hide, it was bigger than he ever imagined, and they were willing to do anything to keep him quiet. Caleb stood frozen by the water fountain, his heart pounding. Freddie Charles's words echoed in his head. Then you might not make it home. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't an empty threat. The way Charles had said it, the cold smile, the dead look in his eyes meant he was serious. Caleb swallowed hard, forcing himself to breathe. He had read about corruption, about cover-ups, but he never thought he'd be living one. Now, it was real, and he was in danger. He turned back toward the courtroom, his legs moving faster than his mind. He needed to tell someone: Judge Albert, his mom, anyone who would listen. But just as he reached for the courtroom door, his instinct screamed at him. Wait, think. Charles had threatened him in a public hallway. That meant one of two things. Charles was reckless. Charles knew no one would believe Caleb. Caleb clenched his fists. He needed proof. He needed a plan. Taking a deep breath, he turned away from the door and walked quickly toward the courthouse exit. He wasn't running away. He was going hunting. Outside, the afternoon sun burned hot. Caleb scanned the parking lot, his brain working a mile a minute. Charles was part of something bigger. That much was clear. The confession had been fake. The trial had been rushed. And now, a police Freddy was personally trying to scare him off. Caleb had to find out what they were hiding. He pulled out his phone and typed quickly, "Meet me at the library. Urgent." He sent the message to his best friend, Aaron. Then he started walking. He didn't notice the black SUV parked across the street, or the man inside watching him go. The library was nearly empty when Caleb arrived. The smell of old books and ink filled the air, a comforting scent in the middle of all this chaos. Aaron was already there, sitting at their usual table in the back. "You better have a good reason for calling me out here, bro," Aaron said, leaning forward. "I was in the middle of a game." Caleb sat down. "I need your help," Aaron blinked. "Wait, you need my help? The boy genius needs help?" Caleb didn't smile. "It's serious," Aaron groaned. "Okay, what's going on?" Caleb lowered his voice. "I think the cops are covering something up, and I think they were ready to throw me in jail to keep it hidden." Aaron stared. "Wait, what?" Caleb quickly explained everything: the rushed case, the fake confession, Freddie Charles's threat. When he finished, Aaron let out a low whistle. "Dude, you need to get out of town." Caleb shook his head. "No, I need to find out what they're hiding." Aaron sighed, running a hand over his face. "You always got to be difficult, huh?" Caleb smirked slightly. "You wouldn't be my friend if I wasn't." Aaron snorted. "True." He leaned forward. "Okay, what's the plan?" Caleb exhaled. "First, we find out who the real suspect is, the one they arrested." Aaron nodded. "You thinking fake name or fake person?" Caleb rubbed his chin. "Could be either. But I have an idea." He pulled out his phone and typed quickly. "Juvenile arrest records, city database." A login page popped up. Aaron leaned over, reading the screen. You do realize you need an official login to get in, right?" Caleb didn't answer. He just opened another app. Aaron's eyes widened. "Bro, no way. You're hacking the police database?" "Not hacking," Caleb said, tapping away. "Just borrowing access." Aaron whistled. "You are so going to get arrested again." Caleb ignored him, fingers flying. Seconds later, he was in. A list of recent arrests filled the screen. He scrolled quickly, and then there it was. Suspect, Nathaniel Brooks, age, 19, crime, burglary confession. Yes, Caleb clicked the file. But instead of a detailed report, there was almost nothing. No mugshot, no fingerprints. Just a name and a confession. Aaron frowned. "That's weird, right?" Caleb nodded. "Super weird." He scrolled down until he found something even stranger. Nathaniel Brooks had been arrested 1 hour before the robbery even happened. Caleb's blood ran cold. Aaron grabbed his arm. "Wait, are you saying?" Caleb's voice was barely a whisper. "They arrested him before the crime happened. That means..." Aaron finished the sentence for him. "They set it up." The boys stared at each other. Then Aaron grabbed his phone. "We got to tell someone." But before Caleb could respond, a new message popped up on his screen. A blocked number. "Stop digging, or else." Caleb's stomach clenched. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something through the library window. A black SUV, parked across the street. Watching them, Caleb grabbed Aaron's arm. "We have to go. Now." Aaron saw the SUV and swallowed hard. "Yeah, good idea." The two boys shot to their feet and headed for the back exit. They didn't see the man in the SUV pick up his radio. "They're moving. Follow them." And just like that, the hunt was on. Caleb and Aaron slipped out the library's back door, their hearts pounding. The sun had started to set, casting long shadows across the alley. Aaron grabbed Caleb's arm. "Dude, we are in some deep trouble right now." Caleb didn't argue. He could feel it. The weight of something much bigger than them pressing in. Something dangerous. The black SUV hadn't moved yet, but Caleb knew it wouldn't be long before they were followed. He turned to Aaron. "We need to get somewhere safe." Aaron nodded. "Yeah, but where?" Caleb's brain worked fast. His house? No. Too obvious. The police had already been there when they arrested him. Aaron's place? Same problem. Then an idea hit him. "My uncle's barber shop," Caleb said. Aaron frowned. "The one on 12th Street? Yeah. He closes late, and he's got security cameras everywhere." If they follow us there, we'll have proof. Aaron hesitated. Man, I don't know. This is feeling like some spy movie stuff. And in spy movies, the guys like us don't make it to the end. Caleb managed a small smile. Then let's make sure we do. Aaron sighed. Fine. But if I die, I'm haunting you. Caleb nodded. Fair deal. Now let's move. They took off, cutting through side streets, avoiding the main roads. Caleb's heart pounded with every step. But when he glanced back, the SUV was gone. Aaron noticed too. I don't like that. Caleb didn't either. They had been watched. But now they were being hunted. The barber shop sat on the corner of 12th and Main, a small brick building with a flickering neon sign that read Jackson's Cuts. Caleb knocked on the glass door. After a few seconds, his uncle, Terrence Jackson, peeked out. His thick beard was speckled with gray, and his tired eyes widened when he saw Caleb. Boy, what are you doing out this late? Uncle T, we need to come inside. It's important. Terrence frowned but unlocked the door, letting them in. The moment the door shut, Caleb turned to his uncle. Someone is after us, he said, voice low. Terrence's expression hardened. Who? Caleb hesitated. Cops. His uncle stiffened. You serious? Caleb nodded. Terrence sighed, running a hand over his face. Come to the back. The shop smelled like aftershave and fresh-cut hair. The clippers were still on the counter. Old jazz music played from the radio. Terrence led them to his office, closing the door behind them. All right, he said. Talk. Caleb told him everything. The fake case, the fake confession, the threat from Freddie Charles, and now the mysterious SUV. By the time he finished, Terrence looked furious. That's why I don't trust none of them, his uncle muttered, shaking his head. They do whatever they want, and when they get caught, they just cover it up. Caleb exhaled. I need proof. Something solid. Something that can take them down. Terrence thought for a moment, then pulled out his phone. I got a guy, he said. Aaron's eyes widened. You got a guy? Everybody got a guy, Terrence said. Mine happens to be real good with finding things people want to keep hidden. He dialed a number and waited. After a few rings, someone picked up. A deep voice answered. Who's this? It's T, Terrence said. I need a favor. The voice on the other end paused. What kind of favor? Terrence glanced at Caleb. I need someone to look into a name Nathaniel Brooks, supposedly arrested for burglary. I need to know if he even exists. The man on the phone let out a low chuckle. Oh, this sounds like trouble. It is, Terrence said. Can you help or not? The voice hummed. Give me an hour. Then the line went dead. Caleb let out a breath. Now we wait. Terrence nodded. Yeah, and in the meantime, we stay put. But outside, something moved. Aaron saw it first, his face going pale. Caleb. Caleb turned. Through the blinds, under the glow of a streetlight, the black SUV was parked across the street. Waiting, watching. Aaron swallowed. Okay, change of plan. We die here instead. Caleb's stomach twisted. They weren't just being followed. They were being trapped. The next hour felt like forever. The SUV didn't move. No one got out. It just sat there. Then, Terrence's phone buzzed. The deep voice spoke. We got a problem. Terrence frowned. What kind of problem? The man sighed. Nathaniel Brooks, he don't exist. Caleb's blood ran cold. What? No records? No history? No fingerprints? It's like he was made up out of thin air. Terrence cursed under his breath. Caleb felt his heart pound. They had arrested a what? A ghost? A fake person to make sure he took the blame? Aaron gripped the table. Oh, we are so dead. Then, a loud thud came from the front door. A shadow moved outside the shop. Caleb froze. Terrence grabbed a bat from behind his desk. Stay behind me, he whispered. Another thud. Then, a voice, deep, unfamiliar. Caleb Jackson, we need to talk. Caleb's heart pounded. They had found him. And now, they were coming in. The knock came again. Caleb Jackson, we know you're in there. Caleb swallowed hard, his hands clenched into fists. Aaron was breathing too fast beside him. Uncle Terrence had his bat gripped so tight, his knuckles turned white. Back door, Terrence whispered. Both of you, now. Caleb hesitated. But now, Caleb grabbed Aaron's sleeve and pulled him toward the back. The barbershop had an exit through the alley. But if they were being watched, that meant they already knew about it. Still, they had no choice. Terrence moved toward the front, his shoulders squared. Who's asking? He called. A pause. Then, "Open the door, Mr. Jackson. This doesn't have to get messy." Caleb and Aaron slipped into the back hallway. "We're going to die, man," Aaron muttered. "We are actually going to die." "Shut up," Caleb whispered, pushing the exit door open just a crack. A cold rush of air hit them. The alley was empty. For now, Caleb took a deep breath. "Okay. On 3, we run." Aaron nodded. 1, 2. Before Caleb could say 3, a second SUV pulled into the alley. Its headlights blazed, flooding the narrow space with light. The car skidded to a stop, blocking their only way out. Caleb yanked Aaron back, heart slamming against his ribs. They were trapped. Inside, Terrence wasn't backing down. "You got a warrant?" he called, standing just behind the door. Silence. Then, a different voice. Low, smooth, controlled. "Mr. Jackson," the voice said. "We're just here to talk." Terrence scoffed. "Funny, I've heard that before." Then, bang! The door shook as someone slammed against it. Terrence took a step back. The voice on the other side remained calm. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." Terrence's grip on the bat tightened. Outside, Caleb's brain raced. They had seconds, maybe less, before whoever was in that SUV got out. And once they did, Caleb didn't want to think about that. He turned to Aaron. "Climb the fence." Aaron gawked at him. "What? It's our only way out," Caleb said. "Climb." Aaron hesitated, then took a running start and leaped. The chain-link fence rattled as he scrambled up, his sneakers slipping against the metal. Caleb followed, gripping the cold steel and pulling himself up. Below them, the SUV doors swung open. Caleb heard the footsteps. Then, a voice. "There they are." Caleb climbed faster, too slow. A hand grabbed his ankle. He kicked, hard, but the grip was strong. Panic surged through him. Aaron reached the top. "Come on, man." Caleb gritted his teeth and kicked again, harder. The grip loosened. Caleb yanked himself up, his fingers scraping against metal. Then, a gunshot. The bullet hit the fence, just inches from his hand. Aaron yelped. "Holy!" Caleb didn't stop, didn't look down. He swung his leg over and dropped. His feet hit the ground. Pain shot up his ankle, but he forced himself to move. Aaron grabbed his arm. "Run!" They bolted. Behind them, the men from the SUV scrambled to climb the fence. But Caleb and Aaron were already gone. They ran. Until their legs burned. Until their lungs felt like fire. They ran through alleys, past flickering streetlights, over sidewalks cracked from age. Finally, they ducked into an old parking garage, hiding behind a row of abandoned cars. They collapsed. Aaron was gasping for air. "I hate you." Caleb ignored him, peeking over the hood of a rusted sedan. No sign of the SUVs. No footsteps. For now, Aaron sat up, rubbing his face. "Man, what did we just run from? The actual FBI?" Caleb didn't answer. He was still thinking about the gunshot. They weren't just trying to scare him anymore. They were trying to kill him. Back at the barber shop, Terrence stood in the wreckage of his front door. The men were gone, but the warning was clear. His nephew had gotten too close to something dangerous. And now there was no turning back. The parking garage was silent, except for the sound of Caleb and Aaron struggling to catch their breath. Caleb's back was pressed against the cold metal of an abandoned car, his mind racing. They had almost been killed. This wasn't a game anymore. Aaron wiped sweat from his forehead. "Bro, what did we just escape from?" Caleb shook his head. "I don't know." Aaron swallowed. "What do you know?" Caleb looked him in the eye. "They're willing to kill to keep their secret." A heavy silence settled between them. Aaron let out a nervous laugh. "Man, I thought school was stressful. But nope. Almost getting shot? Way worse." Caleb didn't smile. "We can't go home," he said. "They'll be watching." Aaron exhaled. "Great. So, where do we go?" Caleb thought for a second. Then, he pulled out his phone. There was only one person left to call 15 minutes later. A sleek black car rolled up to the back entrance of the parking garage. A woman in her mid-30s stepped out, dressed in a sharp blazer and jeans. Her long braids fell over her shoulders, and her expression was unreadable. She pushed her sunglasses up onto her head. "Caleb Jackson, you really know how to stir up trouble." Caleb let out a breath of relief. "Aunt Harper." Harper Jackson was a defense attorney. A good one of the best. And right now she was their best chance at staying alive. Aaron blinked. "You got a lawyer in the family, and you didn't call her sooner?" Caleb shrugged. "Better late than never." Harper folded her arms. Get in the car. Now." Neither of them argued. As soon as the car door shut, Harper pulled off, her hands gripping the wheel tight. "I've been hearing things," she said. "Cops pushing a case that doesn't make sense, witnesses disappearing, and now my nephew is running for his life." Caleb nodded. "It's bigger than we thought. The guy they arrested for the robbery, he doesn't exist." Harper's lips pressed together. "They set me up, Aunt V," Caleb continued. "And when I started asking questions, they tried to shut me down. Now they're hunting me." Harper let out a slow breath. "Yeah, I figured it was something like that." Caleb frowned. "Wait, you knew?" Harper didn't take her eyes off the road. "I didn't know for sure, but I've seen cases like this before. They pick a scapegoat, someone easy to blame. Then they close the case fast before anyone looks too deep." Aaron shook his head. "But why Caleb?" Harper glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "Because Caleb is smart, and smart kids are dangerous to people who like to bend the rules." She turned down a side street, heading toward the edge of town. Aaron leaned forward. Where exactly are we going?" Harper's jaw tightened. "Somewhere safe." Caleb didn't like the sound of that. "Where?" Harper didn't answer, which meant she didn't trust anywhere in the city. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a small, rundown motel. The neon sign buzzed weakly in the night. Harper parked and turned to face them. "Listen carefully. You two are staying here tonight. I paid cash, no paper trail. Nobody knows you're here." Caleb crossed his arms. "And what about you?" Harper exhaled. "I need to make some calls. Figure out how deep this goes, but do not leave this room. Got it?" Aaron nodded so fast, his head nearly fell off. "Oh, trust me, I have zero plans of going anywhere." Caleb hesitated, then nodded. "Got it." Harper's eyes softened. "I know you're scared, but I won't let anything happen to you." Then, she reached into her glove compartment and pulled out a gun. Aaron nearly fell out of the car. "Well, okay. This just got way too real." Harper checked the safety, then tucked the gun into her back. "If they're willing to use force," she said, "so am I." Caleb stared at her. "You really think it's that bad?" Harper met his eyes. "They shot at you, Caleb. What do you think?" Caleb felt the chill run down his spine. "Yeah, it was that bad." Inside the motel room, Aaron locked the door twice, then collapsed onto the bed. "All right, I'm done. This is officially the worst day of my life." Caleb sat by the window, staring out at the parking lot. The motel wasn't great faded wallpaper, a buzzing TV, but at least, for now, they were safe. Aaron sat up. "So, what now?" Caleb exhaled. "Now we wait." Aaron groaned. "I hate that answer." Caleb smirked slightly. "Me too." Aaron rubbed his face. "Man, if I had known being your best friend would involve almost getting killed, I would have rethought our whole friendship." Caleb chuckled. Too late now. But his smile didn't last long, because deep down, he knew this wasn't over. Not even close. And then, his phone vibrated. Blocked number. A single message. "We know where you are." Caleb's stomach dropped. And then, the motel lights outside went out. A shadow moved by the window. Someone was here. And this time they weren't knocking. The motel lights flickered out. Caleb's chest tightened. He could barely see Aaron's face in the sudden darkness, but he could hear the sharp intake of breath. A shadow moved past the window, then another. Then a click. The doorknob turned. Aaron whispered, "Oh no." Caleb moved fast. He grabbed Aaron by the shirt and yanked him toward the bathroom. "Hide," Caleb whispered. Aaron didn't argue. They slipped inside, closing the door, just as, bang, the motel door burst open. Heavy boots thudded against the floor. Caleb's heart pounded in his ears. He pressed his back against the wall, barely breathing. The bathroom was small. Just a sink, a toilet, and a shower with a flimsy curtain. Not much cover. Aaron's hands were shaking. Caleb could feel it. From the other room, voices whispered too low to understand. Then, footsteps, getting closer. Caleb's mind raced. If they opened the door, they were done. They had nowhere to run. His fingers brushed the edge of the toilet tank. An idea sparked. Carefully, silently, Caleb lifted the lid off the back of the toilet and handed it to Aaron. Aaron's eyes went wide. Caleb mouthed, "Be ready." Aaron nodded. Then, the bathroom door creaked open. A shadow filled the doorway. A tall, broad-shouldered man in dark clothes stepped in, scanning the small space. Caleb's breath caught in his throat. The man's eyes landed on the shower curtain. Slowly, he reached for it. Caleb tensed. Then, Aaron swung the toilet tank lid. Crack! The man stumbled back, cursing. Caleb lunged forward, grabbing the only other weapon in reach, a cheap motel hairdryer. It wasn't much, but he swung it like his life depended on it. Wham! The man collapsed, dazed. Aaron didn't wait. He bolted out the door, pulling Caleb with him. The motel room was trashed, the bed overturned, drawers pulled out. But Caleb barely had time to process it, because standing near the entrance was another man, and this one had a gun. Caleb and Aaron skidded to a stop. The man, dressed in all black, aimed the gun at them. "Where do you think you're going?" Aaron whispered. "Caleb, I don't want to die in a motel." Caleb didn't either. His brain moved fast. The man wasn't shooting yet. That meant something. He wasn't here to kill them. At least, not yet. "Come with me," the man ordered. "Now." Caleb swallowed. His heart was racing. He glanced at Aaron, then back at the man. Then a loud bang from outside. Tires screeched. The man turned his head, just for a second. Caleb moved. He grabbed the closest thing, a lamp, and threw it with everything he had. Crash! Glass shattered. The gun clattered to the floor. Caleb didn't wait. He grabbed Aaron's arm and ran outside. Headlights blinded them. A car skidded to a stop. The driver's door flew open. "Get in!" Harper yelled. Caleb and Aaron dived into the car. Before the doors even shut, Harper slammed the gas. Tires screeched. The car shot forward, speeding out of the lot. From the rearview mirror, Caleb saw the gunman stumble outside. Another black SUV pulled up next to him. They weren't done. They were going to chase them. Harper didn't waste time. "What did you do?" Caleb took a deep breath. "I think I almost got us killed." Aaron threw his hands up. "You think?" Harper swore under her breath, making a hard right turn. "I told you to stay put." Caleb shook his head. "They found us anyway." Harper didn't argue, because she knew he was right. The SUV behind them roared to life, headlights flashing. Then, another appeared. Then another. 3 in total. Caleb's stomach twisted. Aunt V? I see them," Harper muttered. The first SUV lurched forward, gaining on them. The second swerved to the side, trying to box them in. Aaron gripped the seat. "Aunt V, I really don't want to die in a car chase either." Harper gritted her teeth. "Then hold on." Then she slammed the brakes. Caleb's head snapped forward. Aaron let out a choked scream. The first SUV, caught off guard, swerved hard, trying to avoid them. It clipped the second SUV. Crash! The 2 cars spun out, slamming into a streetlight. The third SUV kept coming. Harper floored the gas. The car launched forward. Caleb's pulse hammered. Are we losing them? Harper's jaw was tight. Not yet. She swerved onto a side street, then another. Then, the road ahead was blocked. More black SUVs. Waiting. Aaron groaned. "Are you kidding me? How many do they have?" Harper's grip tightened on the wheel. Caleb's stomach dropped. They were surrounded. And this time, there was nowhere left to run. Harper slammed the brakes. The car skidded to a stop, just inches from the black SUVs blocking the road ahead. Behind them, more headlights appeared. Trapped, Caleb's hands clenched into fists. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. Aaron barely breathed. "Welp, this is how I die. In a car. Like I always feared." Harper's grip tightened on the wheel. Her jaw clenched. "Stay calm." Caleb swallowed. "They're not here to talk, are they?" Harper didn't answer, because they all knew the truth. The SUV doors opened. Men stepped out, all dressed in black. No badges, no uniforms, just power. Then, one last door opened. Freddie Charles stepped out, his face unreadable. He walked forward, stopping just a few feet from Harper's car. Then, slowly, he raised his hand, motioning for them to step out. Harper's fingers hovered over the gear shift. "Caleb, stay in the car." But Caleb already knew. They weren't getting out of this without answers, and he wanted them. All of them. Before Harper could stop him, Caleb opened the door and stepped out. Aaron cursed under his breath. "Dude, what are you doing?" Harper hissed. "Caleb." But it was too late. Caleb walked forward, toward Charles. The street was empty. The only sound was the hum of the engines. Charles studied him. "Brave kid." Caleb stopped. "I'm not brave." His voice was steady. "I'm just not stupid." Charles smirked. "Debatable." Caleb's fists tightened. "You tried to frame me." Charles shrugged. "You were the perfect choice." Caleb's jaw clenched. Why? Charles let out a slow breath. You really want to know? Caleb didn't blink. Yes. Charles took a step closer. The streetlights made his face look sharper, harder. Because, Caleb, Charles said, his voice smooth, you don't belong in the system. You threaten the system. Caleb frowned. What? Charles sighed. Smart kids like you see the cracks, the flaws. You ask questions, and questions are dangerous. Caleb swallowed. Charles continued, voice calm, too calm. See, we don't just need criminals to keep the machine running, he said. We need the right criminals, the ones nobody will fight for, the ones people will assume are guilty just by looking at them. Caleb felt his stomach turn. Charles tilted his head. What do you think would have happened if we locked you up? Caleb knew the answer. A smart black kid in the system. He would have been swallowed whole. No one would have questioned it. No one would have cared. Charles smiled slightly. But instead, you fought back. His eyes darkened. And now, you know too much. Caleb's breath caught in his throat. Charles turned to his men. Take them. The air shifted. Erin jumped out of the car. Oh, come on, man. Harper threw open her door, pulling her gun. Don't even think about it. Charles didn't look worried. Put the gun down, Miss Jackson. You're outnumbered. Caleb's brain raced. He was one move away from disappearing forever, one move away from being buried under lies. He had one shot, one chance. He had to break the system before it swallowed him. Then, an idea. His only chance. Caleb reached into his pocket, not for a gun, not for a weapon, for his phone, and he pressed play. Charles's voice filled the air. See, we don't just need criminals to keep the machine running. We need the right criminals. The recording was clear. The officers froze. Charles's face turned to stone. Caleb's voice was steady. I was recording the second I stepped out of the car. Charles's jaw clenched. Caleb lifted the phone higher. And right now, this recording is being sent to every journalist I know. Erin grinned. Oh, and guess what? The internet loves corruption scandals. Charles's eye twitched. You think that'll stop us? Caleb took a step forward. No, he said, but it'll make sure everyone sees what you are. Charles's men hesitated. The game had changed. The whole world was about to know the truth. Charles exhaled through his nose. Then he smiled. A slow, knowing smile. Well played, he said. Then he turned to his men. Stand down. The officers lowered their weapons. Charles looked back at Caleb. This isn't over. Caleb didn't blink. I know. Charles smirked. Then I'll see you soon. Then he stepped back, got into the SUV, and drove away. The others followed. Just like that, they were gone. Silence. Erin let out a long breath. Okay. That was insane. Harper holstered her gun, still tense. Caleb, that was dangerous. Caleb exhaled. I know. She studied him. You were ready to die for that, weren't you? Caleb swallowed, then nodded. Harper's eyes softened. Then, suddenly, she hugged him. Tight. Caleb tensed at first, then let himself breathe. Erin clapped his hands together. So, can we never do that again? Caleb let out a breath. No promises. Erin groaned. I hate you. Caleb smirked. I know. By morning, the recording was everywhere. News stations, blogs, social media. The city exploded with outrage. Investigations were launched. Careers ended. But Charles? He disappeared. No charges. No arrest. Gone. 1 week later, Caleb sat on his porch, staring at the sunset. Harper sat beside him. You did it. Caleb didn't answer, because deep down, he knew it wasn't over. Charles was still out there, watching, waiting. And someday, they would come for him again. But next time, he'd be ready. 1 week later, the city was still on fire. News anchors called it the justice system scandal of the decade. Protests erupted. People demanded arrests. The mayor held emergency press conferences, promising change. But Caleb knew better. The system didn't change. It just hid its cracks better. And the biggest crack of all, Freddie Charles, was gone. Not arrested, not fired, gone. No one knew where, no one knew how. And that was a problem. Because Caleb knew one thing for sure. Charles wasn't finished. Caleb sat on his porch, scrolling through the news on his phone. Harper leaned against the railing beside him, arms crossed. You're still thinking about it, aren't you? Caleb didn't look up. Of course. Harper sighed. You exposed them. You won. Caleb clenched his jaw. No, I just made them go underground. He wasn't stupid. When people like Charles got caught, they didn't go to jail. They moved. They adapted. They waited. Aaron walked up the steps, holding a soda. YALL, really sitting here all dramatic while I'm just trying to enjoy my day. Caleb finally looked up. You're not worried? Aaron scoffed. Oh, I'm terrified. But if I stop for even 5 seconds to think about how close we came to getting murdered, I might throw up. So I'm just vibing instead. Harper smirked. Smart strategy. Caleb sighed, putting his phone down. I don't get it. Charles should be in prison. He should be on trial. Instead, he just vanished. Harper exhaled. Guys like him always have an escape plan. Aaron pointed at Caleb. And guys like you always gotta go poking around and making things worse. Caleb didn't deny it, because he was already digging. That night, when the house was quiet, Caleb locked his bedroom door and pulled out his laptop. If Charles had disappeared, then there had to be a trail. Caleb had learned something valuable over the last week. The people who ran the system, they were sloppy. They assumed no one was watching. Caleb was watching. He pulled up government databases, news reports, even hacked into private security logs. And then, there it was, a flight record, one-way ticket, private plane, destination, Washington, D.C. Caleb's stomach tightened. Charles hadn't disappeared. He had moved up. Caleb stared at the screen, his fingers hovering over the keys. He could ignore it, pretend it wasn't happening, pretend he was just a normal 12-year-old kid. But that was a lie. He had never been normal, and now the stakes were higher than ever. Caleb exhaled. Then he picked up his phone and called Harper. When she answered, her voice was groggy. Caleb, it's 2 a.m. Caleb didn't hesitate. Charles is in D.C. silence. Then Harper cursed. Send me everything. Caleb already had. She exhaled. Okay, I'll make some calls. But Caleb, I know, Caleb said. This is dangerous, she sighed. I was going to say you should go to bed. But yeah, that too. Caleb smirked. No chance. Harper muttered something under her breath, then hung up. Caleb closed his laptop. He had taken down Charles once. Now, he was going to end him for good. The next morning, Harper showed up, with 2 cups of coffee and a plane ticket. Aaron nearly choked on his breakfast. Wait, what is happening right now? Harper slid the ticket across the table to Caleb. You coming or not? Caleb looked at the ticket. It wasn't just for him, there was a second one. Aaron's name was on it. Aaron blinked. Oh no. Caleb smirked. Too late. You're already in this. Aaron groaned, slumping over the table. I hate you so much, bro. Caleb grabbed the ticket. DCTH, the capital. The heart of power, that's where Charles had run to. That's where Caleb was going. Because this time, he wasn't just playing defense. He was taking the fight to them. And he wasn't leaving until Charles paid. The plane touched down at Reagan National Airport. Caleb stared out the window. The skyline of Washington, D.C. stretched before him, gleaming in the morning light. This was it, the final move. Aaron stretched, yawning. All right, I'm just going to say it. This is officially the most insane thing we've ever done. Caleb smirked. And we haven't even started yet. Harper grabbed her bag. All right, listen up. We're not tourists. We're here for one reason, to find Charles, expose him, and make sure he can never do this again. Aaron groaned. Cool. Just casually taking down government corruption. No big deal. Harper turned to Caleb. What do we know? Caleb pulled out his phone, opening the files he had collected. Charles took a private flight here a week ago, Caleb said. But there's no public record of him after that. Aaron frowned. So either he's hiding, or someone is hiding him, Caleb finished. Harper exhaled. Then let's start at the source. She turned to the car rental counter. We're going hunting. The drive through DC was different from home. Here, power wasn't loud. It was quiet, hidden. The city was clean, the buildings polished. But Caleb could feel it. Corruption, buried under all that gloss. Aaron tapped the GPS. All right, so where exactly are we going? Caleb scrolled through his phone. I traced the plane rental back to a private security firm. They handle sensitive government matters. Harper raised an eyebrow. Which is code for we clean up messes people don't want made public. Caleb nodded. And guess who just became their newest consultant? He turned his phone around. On the screen, a security badge. Charles's face on it. Aaron groaned. Oh, come on. This man got promoted? Harper's grip on the wheel tightened. "Yeah, that's how it works," Caleb exhaled. "Which means we don't just have to take him down." His eyes burned with determination. "We have to take the whole system down with him." They parked a block away from the Helio security building, a sleek, glass-covered tower. Caleb studied the entrance. High security, cameras everywhere. Aaron sighed. "Let me guess you got some crazy plan?" Caleb grinned. "You know me so well." Aaron groaned. "I hate that I do." The plan was simple. Caleb would sneak in. Aaron would run distraction. Harper would pull the strings from outside. And if it worked, they'd have everything they needed to end Charles forever. Caleb slipped into the staff entrance, using a stolen key card from an unsuspecting guard. Inside, the building was cold, all steel and glass. He moved quickly, staying low, avoiding the cameras. His heart pounded. If he got caught here, there was no walking away, but he had come too far to back down now. Meanwhile, Aaron did what Aaron did best, caused chaos. He strolled into the main lobby acting like he belonged. When a guard looked at him suspiciously, Aaron grinned. "Hey yo, YALL hiring? I heard y'all need people for, top secret government scandals." The guard frowned. "Sir, you need to leave." Aaron nodded. "Seriously? Cool. But before I go, who's in charge of the corruption department?" The guard's radio crackled to life. "We have a disturbance in the lobby." Aaron grinned. "Perfect." While security focused on Aaron, Caleb slipped into the main server room. Rows of computers glowed softly in the dim light. He plugged in a flash drive and started downloading everything. Emails, transactions, confidential files. The truth, all of it. Back outside, Harper monitored the feeds from her laptop. Her jaw tightened as she scanned the data coming through. "This is bigger than we thought," she muttered. Aaron peeked over her shoulder. "How much bigger?" Harper turned the screen. It wasn't just about Charles. This was a network. Judges, cops, businessmen, even politicians. All connected, all untouchable. Until now. Caleb's heart raced as the files finished downloading. He yanked out the flash drive, and then the alarm blared. Security had found him. A voice boomed over the intercom. "Intruder in the server room." Caleb's blood ran cold. Then a door slammed open, and standing there Charles. The room felt smaller. Charles smirked, arms crossed. "I should have known you wouldn't let this go." Caleb's grip tightened on the flash drive. "I don't like unfinished business." Charles took a step closer. "You really think you're going to walk out of here?" Caleb smiled. "I don't think. I know." Then, Harper's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Now." Boom. The fire alarms exploded. Smoke poured into the hallways. And just like that, the building descended into chaos. Caleb didn't wait. He ran. Charles cursed, chasing after him. Security swarmed the hallways. But Caleb was faster. He dodged, slipping through doors, weaving through offices. Then, he saw Aaron at the entrance, waving frantically. "Move, dude, move!" Caleb sprinted. Behind him, Charles yelled orders. Too late. Caleb dived through the doors and straight into Harper's getaway car. She peeled out before the guards could react. Aaron collapsed into the seat. "Oh, I think I just had a heart attack." Caleb grinned, breathing hard. He had the files. They had everything. And Charles? He was done. The next morning, the headlines hit. Corruption exposed. Police, politicians, and secret network uncovered. The world saw the truth. People were arrested. Careers ended. And Charles? Gone. Again. Days later, Caleb sat on his porch, staring at the sky. Harper sat beside him. "You did it." Caleb didn't answer. Because deep down he knew Charles was still out there, and one day they would meet again. But next time, Caleb wouldn't just win. He would end the game. Forever. The system tried to break him, but they forgot one thing. You can't break what's smarter than you. And Caleb Jackson was the smartest of them all.